Okay, so welcome to today's webinar, Rooted in Equality, Strengthening Food Security through Gender Plus Inclusive and Sustainable Small-Scale Farming. My name is Vasya Madesti. I'm one team member at Acting Project and also a consultant at Yellow Window. So we are really delighted to host this webinar. Before we start with our conversation and while people are joining, I will say a few opening words about what is Acting in case this is the first time that you hear about our project. So Acting is an EU-funded project aiming to understand the impact of Green Deal policies on vulnerable groups, prevent inequalities, and produce knowledge and innovations to advance behavioral change at individual and collective levels for an inclusive and equal European Green Deal. With this project, we aim to understand the impact of Green Deal policy initiatives on individual and collective behaviors with specific attention to vulnerable groups, to empower policymakers and other stakeholders to anticipate and mitigate the potential negative impact of policies on inequalities, and to co-creatively design and implement pilot actions to be deployed by policymakers and stakeholders in the policy domains of the Green Deal. Acting relies on a consortium of 12 European partners and about 100 researchers in over 30 countries. So the conversation today will start with an introduction from Acting researcher Ayşe Gül Altınay from Sabanci University on the recommendations from the Acting research and our fact sheet, which is closely tied and related to today's topic. And she will be joined by two co-speakers that we really thank that are with us today. Aylin Topal, who is an associate professor of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration at Middle East Technical University, and Martin Felix Gajdusek. I hope that I say that correctly. If not, you can correct me later, researcher at ZCI, who is an Acting partner as well. We aim to have like an open discussion, and without any further ado, I will give the floor to Ayşe Gül for her presentation.
Thank you so much, Vasya, for organizing this meeting. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to join you this morning from Istanbul. It's a nice spring day, and we are going to be talking about an issue that's been really dear to our hearts and also very central to our research in Acting. So I'm going to be presenting you the major outlines. We don't have time to go into detail, but I would like to present some of the key points. Let me see if I can share my screen. Is it working now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
So I would like to share with you some of the key points from a fact sheet that we have co-authored with Burcu Burhan Türeli, Marina Kakace, Ana Vivas, Sofia Strid, and Esin Düzel. I'm also joined here by my co-authors. So this is a fact sheet titled Local is Beautiful, Gender Plus Inclusive Agricultural Policies and Civil Society Practices for and with Small Farmers. So what we tried to do in this fact sheet was to put together the different learnings from the Acting project on gender plus inclusive, on the need for gender plus inclusive agricultural policies, what we have learned on the ground about what is missing, why we need new policies and new practices by CSOs. So this is basically a fact sheet that has recommendations both for policymakers and for people in the civil society sector. So let me go over some of our key points. So we start with the observation that agriculture and rural areas are central to the European Green Deal. And with the growing food crisis, environmentally sustainable and gender plus inclusive small-scale farming has the potential to play a prominent role, not only for food security, which is one of our main research focuses here, but also for soil regeneration, reduction of land degradation, mitigation of disasters, and preservation of biodiversity and cultural diversity. So all of these concepts or all of these aspects of the European Green Deal are central to the acting research, and the focus on small farms really captures most of these issues and forces us to think about new and innovative ways of working with small farmers, small farmers and for small farmers. So in acting, we have this gender plus perspective, which means that we certainly ask questions about women. We ask the question, where are the women? But we also look into the ways in which gender shapes all practices, including agriculture here. And we try to stay away from a binary gender construction. So the plus responds to both non-binary expressions of gender, but also the fact that gender always goes together with other inequalities, class, race, geographic positionality, ethnicity, religion, ability, disability, age, and all kinds of other inequalities that intersect the experience of gender. So although there's a focus on women, really read it as looking at the diversity of women and also looking beyond the man-woman binary construction. So what are some of the main findings of acting? First of all, acting research has shown that there's a lack of a coherent and systematic agricultural policy to improve domestic food security and nutrition. There's also a lack of public resources and social support in this field, and there's a need for collective action as a strategy that may take different forms. The high agricultural costs and economic production uncertainties, especially with climate change, push small farmers out of agricultural production at exactly the moment we need them more than ever. There's also unequal competition growing with large industrial agriculture between large industrial agricultural conglomerates and small farmers. So we talk about gender plus equality and the link between gender plus equality and food security and nutrition in different ways in the project. What we observe is that what we have seen in our research is that women fulfill significant roles and responsibilities to ensure food security and nutrition and enable behavioral change, not only for themselves, their children and their families, but also for the society at large. And they do this under extremely difficult, challenging circumstances. And although women are very active on the ground, literally on the ground, the majority of the 10 million farms in the EU are small farms, yet only 30% are managed by women. And in some areas, these percentages are significantly lower. So what do women do? Why are they significant in securing food security and doing it through sustainable agricultural practices? Women grow food in their gardens, farms, or community gardens in cities. They're very active in the field, which contribute to generating income, promoting food safety, and providing access to higher quality food, especially for the communities that have been made the most vulnerable. Women also prepare food sources for the entire year, especially winter by drying, canning, and pickling vegetables. They undertake responsible waste management, sometimes organize around waste management, come up with innovative ways of managing waste. They rely on intimate relations and social networks to receive support, again, from other women. So mothers and grandmothers, there are generations of women and daughters, as we mark someplace else, that really help women become engaged in securing food in different ways. Last but not least, we see women taking the lead in activism to protect rural areas, to protect trees, forests, agricultural land. What you see in this photo is really a historic struggle that has been taking place in the Akbelen forest in southern Turkey. These women have been at the forefront. They're all local farmers, small farmers. They grow olives and they work with animals. They grow all sorts of food in their gardens and farms. So they have really come together to organize a historic resistance against a mining project. And one of them, whom you see in the middle, has recently been elected as the muhtar of the village. So she has become the lead person of the village, which means that their struggle will be even stronger in the years to come. So we see women taking a lot of action. What are some of the recommendations that we have put together here? And my wonderful colleagues, Felix and Aylin, will discuss these recommendations, their reflections with you in a minute. Let me go over some of the key points. So some of the recommendations are to improve, to contribute to food security through small farm practices that are gender plus inclusive. Others are about reducing the negative impacts of both climate change and the existing policies on agricultural production. So for policymakers, we have suggested that there's a significant need for more incentives for gender plus inclusive farming, which can come in various forms, new awards, and making the existing ones accessible, new forms of waste management, composting, and soil regeneration for a bottom-up transformation. And the photos you see on the left come from a women-led initiative that takes food left from the markets, weekly markets, and creates compost to help the local small farmers. So there are many innovative initiatives that are already there that need to be supported. Accessible alternative certification systems came up as a very significant need in our research and our workshops. Participatory guarantee systems is one possible direction, but we need to come up with more because the existing certification systems are not accessible. Gender plus inclusive public spaces through participatory urban planning and design also came up as an important recommendation. So local access to the products of environmental sustainable small farms and women's cooperatives is really key if we want to support them and both make their sustainable food more accessible and also support their existence in the first place. We recommend revised public procurement policies where public institutions like hospitals, schools, public offices purchase food from the local farmers and also support their gender plus inclusive practices. In terms of food sovereignty, the farmers' right to seeds came up as an important recommendation. Gender plus inclusive networks and knowledge sharing also came up as an important direction for empowering and supporting women and women plus, let's say, in the system. And there are like farm advisory systems with a gender plus inclusive participatory governance is a direction that we propose in this fact sheet. Gender plus inclusive training and education for small farmers, weaving together local indigenous gender plus experience and wisdom with research, again, comes up as an important direction to take, as well as gender plus inclusive agroecological farming, prioritizing local supply chains, traditional local knowledge, and intergenerational knowledge exchange, protecting wildlife habitat and water quality, embracing gender, cultural, and racial diversity at the same time as we work for sustainable food production. The policy recommendations for civil society organizations emphasize networks and collaboration to enable behavioral change. So government authorities, civil society organizations, trade associations and unions, small, medium enterprises, food cooperatives, small farmers need to come together for systemic change to occur in terms of both collective behavioral change and individual behavioral change. So some of our recommendations for the CSOs, the civil society organizations, include working towards co-creation with policymakers for environmental, sustainable, fair, and gender plus inclusive local food systems, public awareness, engaging in greater public awareness where local seasonal food consumption for human, animal, and planetary health is better known and better practiced in all localities. Supply chain solutions, working towards creating supply chain solutions which will enable access to customers without intermediaries and enable short supply chains. Local knowledge and wisdom is emphasized in this fact sheet. It came up as an important point in our research and workshop discussions. We need the local knowledge and wisdom of small farmers. And the women, BIPOC communities, migrants, and indigenous people who are engaged in agriculture have tremendous wisdom and local knowledge, which needs to be made more visible and accessible via better stories. And we also need networks at the local, regional, national, and international level among small farmers and farmers associations and cooperatives. On the left, you see some farmers from Malta, where apparently there's the lowest percentage of women managing farms. So women do a lot of work on the ground and yet are not the managers. So we have a few better stories, and maybe my colleagues can share with you some of the websites for these better stories. We find it very important in acting to look at the examples that are already working on the ground from whom we can learn. So we have put together, and you can also read more about these on our website and in our reports. So the Baia Erdo, the Forest of the Witches, is an inspiring case of building gender plus solidarities that address gender and ethnic exclusion, poverty, and unemployment. There's a focus of working with Roma women. This is from Hungary, a better story from Hungary. I will skip this other better story. You can maybe read more about it later. It's a beautiful story from Brazil. We have a story of a queer-owned indigenous worker-run farm cooperative that comes from the US, the System Land Farms, and a better story from Turkey, from Istanbul, the Kadıköy Cooperative, that brings together customers and producers, small farmers, contributing to both public awareness and the support of sustainable local small farm production and practices. So I will stop here the presentation. You already have links to some of the references that I shared and also to our fact sheet. Please download the fact sheet, and any recommendations you have, we would like to hear now, and also you can contact us later on. But now I would like to turn to my colleagues, our wonderful colleagues, Aylin, Topal, and Felix, who are joining us today to discuss the fact sheets. So Aylin, Topal has already participated in an open studio where we discussed our findings and indeed developed this fact sheet. She's not only an associate professor, a professor in political science and public administration, writing and doing research in this field, but she's also very much involved with cooperatives, participatory cooperatives that support rural and local development, working towards climate justice, and also works with international networks. So Aylin, I would like to turn to you first and ask you how you respond to the fact sheet, to the recommendations on the fact sheet, and both your extensive research and your experience on the ground with cooperatives, with small farmers. What do they, from that point of view, what are the recommendations that resonate particularly strongly with you?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and it has been a pleasure to contribute to the ACCTING project. Events like this is very important to keep this debate and our demands from the policymakers visible and audible. So I really appreciate this event. This report, the fact sheet, makes the case that within the frame of the farm to fork strategy, there is an urgent need for new policies to support small-scale farmers and to increase gender plus inclusion. I would like to raise the facts about the fact sheet, the facts that I find really important and crucial to underline. So first of all, this fact sheet underlines the fact that local is at risk and Green Deal is a risk factor. So this, I think, is very important, and it is an often overlooked argument. There has been some concerns with the Green Deal, but I find the debate overwhelmingly optimistic with regards to the green transition. And the discussion is tilted too quickly towards how to adjust the transition, how to integrate to the New Deal. It is like hopping onto the sort of train, but where the train is going. So these concerns and critiques about the Green Deal, I think, has not been heard enough. So for that reason, the first thing I would like to underline, the first fact I would like to underline for this fact sheet is that the Green Deal is not a fixed, is not a complete framework. And it could even be reversible if necessary. So this is the first fact that I really find very important in the fact sheet. And the second fact about this fact sheet is local is gendered and local is intersectional. The emphasis, another important emphasis of the fact sheet is boldly underlining the fact that Green Deal is gender plus blind. So the whole Green Deal framework sadly overlooks the vitality of the gender plus inclusivity. And it failed, this Fit for 55 packages failed to incorporate gender dimension. And this blindness is beginning from the policy making. So the policy framework, the policy suggestions, policy recommendations of this fact sheet is very important to show that policy making is a long process. And there is still need and the train's direction, destination can be diverted. So, and according to the, taking the gender plus inclusivity and smaller producers into its focus. So for that reason, I find in general terms the fact sheet and recommendations very important, and keeping this debate and keeping the demands of the people visible, and keeping underlining the fact that local is gendered and intersectional. And another important fact with regards to the fact sheet that the fact sheet underlines is gendered and intersectional local is more vulnerable vis-a-vis global market mechanisms. So this is also one of the emphasis in the fact sheet, that local is beautiful, but there are a lot of risks. Global markets can crush the local, and if public is not behind it. So the fact sheet is calling for a new notion of public, calling for new incentive mechanisms for gender inclusivity, which is very crucial because the Green Deal framework does really, there are a lot of incentive mechanisms crafted within the new common agricultural policy, the new CAP, but the gender plus inclusivity is not there. Gender is not there. There are incentives for young farmers, there are incentives for small farmers, fine, very good, but the gender inclusivity is not mentioned at all. So the fourth recommendation is titled as establish regulations and require public procurement. Schools, hospitals, and all public institutions, cafeteria should prioritize local farmers, and the incentive mechanisms, direct or indirect incentive mechanisms for gender plus inclusivity is very important. Another important, I'm going to finish. I think I have 5 minutes or so. Ayşe Gül, could I speak 2 more minutes?
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So another important fact that I find very important in this fact sheet is local knowledge is universal. I really appreciate the emphasis on local knowledge. Perhaps not boldly stated in the fact sheet, but Ayşe Gül in her presentation today, referred to it explicitly, that the cultural diversity, farming practices, education, training, even perhaps certification issue has insights about the value of local knowledge. And I reckon that local and universal should not be portrayed as binary oppositions. And the policy recommendations 7 and 8 refers to viewing together local experiences and wisdom with scientific research and traditional local knowledge. So these are very important, that these are not local and universal knowledge. Scientific and local traditional knowledge are not necessarily opposing forms of knowledge. They are contributing to each other, and the fact sheet underlines this fact very efficiently, effectively. And even the certification idea, I read it from that perspective as well, that there is also some local traditional knowledge aspects to the certification. So perhaps another certification is possible, could be, sort of one of the conclusions I thought in terms of the recommendations. And last but not at all the least, the fact that the fact sheet underlines is local is beautiful only if it is organized. So it is very much emphasized in it. So it is not local is beautiful full stop. So there are a lot of emphasis on the participatory governance for food system from a bottom-up fashion, farming advisory systems. There is a lot of emphasis in many pages on the cooperation rather than competition among the small farms. So the networking in the recommendations for the civil society is very valuable. So and all the better stories refer to some organizational capacity of the local actors. So emancipation is a collective notion. So it is emancipatory. Local can be beautiful and emancipatory, and it is necessarily a collective process. Sometimes empowerment, the notion of empowerment is, I think, wrongly reified to individual level phenomena, but I think it is the collective notion should be emphasized in that way, and local should be cooperative, collective, and solidaristic. And this fact sheet does it very well. So on this slogan-like note, I end my words. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Aylin. Aylin, all of the points that you make are really so pertinent and such a wise reflection on what we have in the fact sheet and how it can be further developed. And I will come back to you to ask about that as well. Now I would like to turn to my wonderful colleague, Felix. Gajdusek, who's based in Vienna and is our partner in acting. But Felix has also done extensive research with farmers, not only in Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and in many other countries. And he himself comes from a farming family and is engaged on the ground in the field. So we have a lot of local wisdom combined with scientific wisdom that accumulates in Felix. And Felix, would love to hear your reflections on this fact sheet.
Good morning, good to see you. I hope you can hear me well. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you also, Aylin, to be so exact with all the sticking to the recommendations, which was also like sent out for the organization of that meeting. I just don't want to waste your time much talking about other things, but I want to show you the first harvest of honey now. So this is like unintentionally built by bees, and as my family is a beekeeping family, so we brought some of these here and we will taste it, but I have to wash my hand now, but doesn't matter. So it's very tasty honey. So, and that is also what we all go for. We want to have good things in our hand. We want to live in a healthy world, and also in a healthy society. And this brings us also a bit, because I come from the Center for Social Innovation, and social innovation is always like a bit mixed up. What we talk about, and this is also what the fact sheets addresses, is societal change and transformative change. And there we have like many traps, there we have many experiments, and I would like to come back to these matters a bit in one sense. So when you look on this, the current society and the socio-technical system where we all live in, we have also this policy, we have the science we have the culture, we have the markets as well. And actually this is what we live in, and this is the context there are many others as well. And actually, so it's a kind of socio-technical system we are all living in. And in the end, we want to change the system. The experiment is nice and can be system stabilizing the system, but we want actually to change also a bit the system. And when we look on the Green Deal policies and some of the matters that are important for us talking here as agriculture, there we have the mainstream version of agriculture across Europe and also in other countries around the world, where we have a size-based agriculture. That's the mainstream, let's say, mainstream visible practice, and an economy of scale, you know, all this. It's considered a technical system. It's not much thinking about the role of people that are involved in that. And even the farmers, what is the traditional viewpoint, what we have like in our minds 50 years back or even longer, they become now like more managers of the resources. And this is maybe even more realistic. I mean, not from the technical viewpoint of organizing a farm, what is a bit frustrating to be not so close to the resources. But I mean, we are relating to new roles, and these roles are changing. And this not hides, but opens many opportunities also to change the role understanding in those people that are involved, but also who can go in and who can experiment. Because we are not only like these managers in that, we don't need only a profitable outputs, but we are caring more for the resources. So we look more on the soil. We have policies that address that. We look more like mission-driven forward. I mean, generally now stepping back out of these farming practices, and that's very good. And because we take care of that, what is linked to the mission, and generations change as well. The question is, and I think that is very good that it's in the fact sheet as well, who can actually experiment and who has the motivation. And there are many factors that deviate us from this change of society and a transformative change. It is like we are system stabilizing with experiments as well, because if you cover poverty through a certain scheme, then you stabilize as well the system, because there is no popping up of no, people are not like becoming engaged to protest much. if you like find solutions that are small solutions, but okay, they satisfy people that they can survive and all these matters. But however, that's one issue. But I want to go back to that social change and transformative change, and that is, I think, one matter what you have put also in the recommendation, and what also Aylin pointed out is this matter of procurement or public policies to respond appropriately to these mission-driven challenges. I'm talking too much, but what I think is, and what is not fully exploited, I'm not talking about the recommendations only, but this policy making is always very nice. So you have the Green Deal, a politician puts it on the table, it becomes a policy, it becomes more practically, it becomes like the responsibility of countries, it becomes the responsibility of regions, then it goes even to villages and smaller structures. However, the instrument, the delivery of the policy is not done by people, but it's often done by instruments. So you put a financing scheme forward that is maybe addressing the matters adequately or not. There are lobbies behind these instruments, like we have in agriculture, we have the size-based agricultures. So there is a lobby to keep that intact. You have seen the protest in Belgium, in Paris recently. So you have seen many of these protests in the past, and you have these, you can't get rid of them. But what you can change is delivery of policy in details. We won't change the framework immediately of this policy. You can do, you can check the delivery of instruments if they include this inclusiveness, vulnerability matters, if they include gender plus matters, if they can do assessments that are valuable and contribute in the next round to the policy making. And that is the realistic experiment that can be also put forward, because some of you are also contributing to these policies in evaluations, in projects. And this comes, a second point I want to put forward, because you have addressed also the civil society organizations, which is, I think, a very good, is my time out? And tell me, please. Yeah. Okay, so we have to ask who can do experiments. I was long thinking, still I'm here at the Center for Social Innovation for many years, but I was still thinking, okay, but we are talking all about urban models, urban ideals, urban developments, urban perspectives. But actually, yes, and that's good. This was my discovery of the last month. It is good because the rural ones, they maybe have not the freedom to do for free an experiment. They don't have the resources, maybe the knowledge, the networks, the many thoughts, the freedom of discussing it, being under pressure. But that's like the urban perspective. Of course, there are on the routes many experiments, but I think that's good, because if we want to really to have a transformative change, we need the experiments, and we need those who invest their resources in the experiments. It sounds like, because we have been talking about agriculture in cities, when I was laughing about it in the beginning, but I think it has to be taken serious, because there is a perspective that opens up. Or if you think about the concept of community-supported agriculture, where you do a kind of contract with a community of agriculture doings, that they deliver you foodstuff, you pay them their wages. Whatever gets out, you get, but that's an act of solidarity that goes much beyond buying stuff in the supermarket, where the half of it goes to the supermarket chain. So I wanted just to address these matters, because I think these are very good. And when it comes to the role models, we have to look also on specific niches where women contribute actively, for instance. So we have the matter of seed breeding in the gardens that are close to the houses. This is done normally by women, because they operate their stuff in this area, for instance, and they contribute to seed biodiversity, for instance. So we have the local seed breeding is beyond what we see in this the usual procedure of producing seeds. Good. This is what I wanted to share, but I have also other ideas, but it's not important. I hope I didn't waste your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Felix. And maybe we'll have time to hear your other ideas as well. I think the last point, I mean, thank you for all the important points about the need for transformative change and the need for different actors to come together for transformative change. So it cannot stop with policymakers. We need researchers, people involved in social innovation, the CSO, civil society organizations. We need the link between the urban and the rural. And the last example you gave, local seed breeding, I think speaks to Aylin's point about the need to learn from local knowledge, right? Ancient seeds, I mean, indigenous populations, local populations have always saved seeds, have always emphasized the significance of ancient seeds, which are more resilient and also nutritious. And now research is kind of catching up on it, or, you know, the general awareness of public policymakers are catching up on this local knowledge. So very important, the point you're both making about the link, the need to make links and create networks and be in co-creative processes between the rural and the urban and with local farmers themselves. Aylin, maybe in a few minutes, we don't have too much time, and I would like to ask people to also raise questions. So feel free at this point to write your questions in chat. And maybe we'll have time to hear you as well. But I would like to ask both of you, again, starting with Aylin, how else do you think this fact sheet could be developed? What have we missed here? And how can we, one, share this message, share the messages that are there that you outlined so beautifully, more effectively with policymakers and CSOs, and also maybe how can we develop it in new ways?
Thank you. The fact that I may sound like a different person from the first round now, you know, since I would be sort of emphasizing some facts that are not emphasized in the fact sheet enough. So another fact is local is global, hence local can be as ugly as the global. So I want to put the small question mark to the title of the fact sheet. Local is beautiful as opposed to what? Global is ugly. I agree with this, but it is this title is idealizing the local state, a local scale, sorry, but not explaining or understanding perhaps enough. So local is not in a vacuum, and local and global are ontologically not distinct from each other. So where does the beautiful local and ugly global begin? So there is no sort of that kind of sort of border between this these two. So that could be that's a conundrum. It's easy to say, difficult to deal with, right? So and it's a straitjacket for the policy making. But so that I mean, I don't want to do injustice to the writers. Now, you know, commenting on it is the easiest, right? So that's only, you know, sort of this framework, this way of looking at it, that local could be ugly, as ugly as the global, perhaps could give us this perspective that, I mean, for instance, the discount supermarkets are now in every smallest village in Turkey. And villagers in this localist, I made up a word, the localist village, the villagers go buy their bread from there, even vegetables from there, because it's cheaper than producing it. So this is the hurtful reality, the hurtful fact that global is local. So so that is you know, then what I mean, but then this is the fact. Where do we go from here? I mean, this is human communities make their own history, but they make it you know, they make it based on the given circumstances. So perhaps what could be added to the report from this sort of point of view is that there should be perhaps more emphasis on the disciplining mechanisms for the big players in the food and agricultural market. In February 2020, the European Commission adopted a proposal for corporate due diligence duty. So this is if a company trades with the EU and the company, the final exporter, they are liable for the social and ecological impact of their supply chain from the local to the EU. So these could be, for instance, at the moment, there is a framework, but we need to expand this framework and we need to include more liability, more responsibility to the corporate. So at the moment, for instance, the liabilities, responsibilities are completely gender plus blind again. You know, there's human rights, there is ecological aspects involved, but there is no mention whatsoever pay gap, gender disparities, gender plus inclusivity in the employment of the corporate, the whole throughout the supply chain. So this could be, I mean, if local can be ugly, it is ugly because of those big corporations. And it is ugly because of their, how they manage, how they exploit the whole chain, the whole supply chain. So that could be, perhaps emphasized a bit more in that sense, to see the reality, to see the, ugly reality. And the other one is, I completely agree with this short supply chains, but at the same time, this is also a question to all of us, that at the same time there are some inevitable longer supply chains. Therefore, the smaller players should be organized, and even the intermediaries. So at the moment, one of the reasons why we support short supply chain, because intermediaries are exploiting, taking the advantage of connecting the producers and the consumers. But if the intermediaries are also cooperatives, if the logistic companies, the big logistic companies, there are like a handful number of logistic companies dominating oligopolies of the world, if they're also cooperatives, if the business model changes and becomes more solidaristic and cooperative, then perhaps the network of sort of cooperatives and the supply chain, albeit long, could still be ecologically and socially responsible. So that could be the local is beautiful, consume locally, but when it is not possible, we need some things to say. We have to have saying, because otherwise it is the global networks, it is the global capitalist, the huge oligopolies will speak. So we need to have words to say with regards to international trade. Right, so we cannot simply turn a blind eye to that ugly reality again. So the ugliness needs to be, addressed perhaps more in the fact sheet. These are the two things that I wanted to emphasize. And another important sort of fact is, especially I am based in Turkey, but I also work on Latin America, and my fieldwork observations from Latin America tells me that local is conflictual. Local is contradictory. So it is sometimes, it gets really tense. Local is tense. So it is not always consensual. So there has to be some, sort of I know the limits of writing an EU reports. I know I have experienced it myself, but this is I'm saying it for here. But resistance, protest, and demand. The wording, perhaps sort of I don't know to what extent I don't want to do injustice again to the writers, but the political aspect, localist political aspect, needs to be somehow transmitted. This message needs to be somehow given there. Another question Ayşe Gül asked you asked me, what do we do with this report? Should I continue say a few words on this, or?
Yes, please do, but briefly, please, because we're running out of time.
Okay, one important thing is we need to demand data. As the academics, from the universities, from the researchers, we know that there is no systematic data collection, gender disaggregated and intersectionality disaggregated. So the first thing we need to do is, we need to demand from the municipality level those data. How many schools, hospitals, canteens, daycares in their constituency? How many discount markets, supermarkets are? We don't know many of the things. I don't know my colleagues in other countries, how much do they have, but I suspect it is not perhaps very different. So those data are very important, and we need to demand the daycares. The daycares should be in the recommendation. I don't think it is in the recommendations now. And there is this mention that women receive help from girl children, and there's a parenthesis in the report which creates concerns regarding the exploitation of children, especially of girls. I do agree. So we need to demand daycares in every town, in every village, for not reproducing the similar gendered roles. Okay, I know
Thank
that
you, Aylin. We can, of course, yes, continue this conversation. These are all really very pertinent and excellent comments. Just to note that, of course, we did not mean local is beautiful. It's kind of in quotation marks, and we wanted to make it a provocative title for all of us to raise these kinds of questions. And it's not a dichotomy between beautiful and ugly, and not at all opposing the local and the global. That's why we emphasize the need to build networks, as you all also mentioned. And a lot of our examples are about creating those global, regional, international networks. And as you say, local, what would be ugly in this context is one, inequalities are toxic to society, and they're also toxic to the environment. That's what all ecology research shows us. So the beautiful is a more equal world and a more sustainable world at the same time. And for both, we need gender plus inclusion practices, and both of you have underlined the need for those practices, how to put them in the instruments, in the practices at the local level. That's exactly the kind of politics and political discussion that we were hoping to raise. I don't see, and all of these, I have noted down, all of your suggestions. I'm sure we will put them to use. The emphasis on gender plus intersectional data, daycares, and more emphasis on the interaction between the local and the global. We will certainly make sure to emphasize as we move forward with these fact sheets. I don't see any questions. So Felix, maybe you can respond to my questions or anything that you would like to share. Yes. Your last remarks.
Thank you. Whoever wants to interrupt me, just do it. So I was thinking what Aylin told us now. So there is this policy delivery evidence. This sounds very strange, but is who actually acts based on what is the strategy and the way forward we all think, or what politics prepare and discuss, what is in the discussion of all the newspapers and all these matters. So this policy discourse, and there is kind of mission that is discussed, and there is also the delivery on site. And there are administrative people that have either no idea or have not like the freedom to act along things they find good. And unfortunately, many of the ideas come with regards to market-oriented activities, yeah, like market and business is important as an employer and so on. Unfortunately or not, because there's also the employment that is very important. But policies should, I mean, the administration should act people-oriented and not business-oriented. I think that's very important when you talk about livelihood, because there are the people, they have to take care of the people and how the housing develops, how all the infrastructure develops, and all the nature as well around the livelihood develops. I think that's an important message. I think it's transported well, but it could be a bit more emphasized in this on the local level. But actually, it's the municipalities, it's the regions that do some things. Depends how centralized matters. And there is also another issue that comes with this market orientation and the global markets and these matters. The value chain awareness and what it puts forward for your livelihood, your surrounding, your immediate surrounding, is often not linked. So you know that the wheat, the rice is produced here, there, you still consume it, but what does it mean for you, and what are the alternatives? What is the value chain? What you lose when using rice? When you lose many matters when you transport it from far away, but okay, you can accept. But we need new pathways to communicate that. I would say it's good that you have the education in, but that would be, for instance, a particular matter to communicate the value chains. I think you still have it in, but I think that's very important, and it should be an educational task, because people are living with that. They don't live only with technical matters and have to understand physics, but they live in a certain system and have to know more of these matters. The only thing I could contribute more is that this contribution of nature to people would be also a matter, but it's not fitting fully in the discussion. But it's all because we think always about the nice livelihood, and but it's not all. It has to be thought more over that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We focus on, in our work on biodiversity, we focus more on these relations, but certainly it's here embedded in the indigenous knowledges, local knowledges, but could be highlighted more. Thank you both for your amazing comments. And I just want to read Marina's question here, even if we don't have time to discuss it. She says, in the general local global conundrum, the relation of local and universal knowledge is particularly interesting to me. How can we combine the two levels in non-exploitative ways while acknowledging the value of both? What practices, better stories would you highlight? I think this is really an excellent question. I don't know. I think we're probably out of time, Vasya, right? We need to wrap up. But maybe, yes, Aylin already has a recommendation here. One alternative that comes to my mind is to promote the gender plus inclusive cooperatives as business models, creating umbrella organizations of cooperatives that could compete with the oligopolies. And she's contributing to exactly such initiatives in Turkey and beyond. So we do have a lot of better stories. The last better story we shared, the Kadıköy Cooperative, is working along the lines of what you were suggesting. There can be longer food chains, and they can be without intermediaries, giving more possibility for fair interactions, raising awareness on both sides and empowering both sides, both the consumers and the producers. So the question is how to amplify these models. And we very much hope that this conversation and the fact sheet that we have produced will encourage and inspire all of us to continue work towards the important directions that both Aylin and Felix have pointed out today. So thank you so much. Big gratitude to both of you for this very inspiring conversation. And I hope that everyone who was present here will make the best use of the fact sheet along these lines, and we are always here to work with you as you organize events, activities in your own localities with these fact sheets. Please let us know. and we would be very happy to contribute in any way we can to the amazing effort that I'm sure everyone who is here is engaged in, whether you're doing research or activism or policy work, political work. All of it needs to come together. And so thank you all for coming together today. And we very much hope that we will continue this conversation in our in the next months of the ACCTING project. So Vasya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ayşe, and everyone for this very stimulating discussion. We unfortunately came to an end. We are like 2 minutes late. I just want to let you know that more webinars are coming on different topics on the EU Green Deal, with one on Tuesday, 4th of June on building resilience to natural disasters. So thank you very much and have a nice Thursday.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
It was a
Bye.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.